All right. Okay. So we are all ready and excited for a super important discussion. And I hope that many of you are able to jump in and listen in and have your questions prepped because today's topic is dating. And we're going to touch up on that and also discuss some of the problems that women specifically are facing in their dating game, right? So today we have Shar. Thank you, Shar, for joining us. I'm so excited to speak to you. Yeah, I literally am so excited. You have no idea. So yeah, let's start with your background. So why dating strategist? You are not your background is not in dating. So tell us more about you and what you are doing.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on. I'm so excited to speak on this topic as well. I'm Shar, and no, my background is not being a dating or relationship coach at all. I have actually been in sales my entire career, 18 years in sales. 14 of those 18 years has been in leadership roles, leading teams. So, as a result of that, what I've had an opportunity to learn is a few really strategic skill sets. One of them being communication, a lot around psychology, a lot around neurology, and kind of the ways that we interact as humans when we're stressed, and the different dynamics of how people, men, women, different ages, different life end up having in terms of communication patterns. And more specifically, recently in my career, I have been an executive coach and get hired by tech companies to come in and be able to essentially build sales infrastructure. And often as a result of that, I will get an opportunity to work with their executives, which are VP and above level folks, both men and women. And as a
Mm-hmm.
result of that work, often what ends up popping up is the business strategy sometimes turns into asking for personal advice and not always just straight going into tell me about how to interact in my dating life. But so
Right.
much of what happens, of course, in our personal relationship is a result of the skill sets that we have in general in being able to relate, right? How do you communicate?
Right.
How do you communicate your value? How do you communicate your values to somebody? What are the ways that you come off? What is the perception that other people have? And so as a result of this, I always often get both men and women that come to me and say, hey, I'm having this challenge in dating. Can you be able to assist me? And this happened enough in my work where I put some processes around it to be able to help any of those executives that come to me with that.
Okay, so let me just restate it sort of in a way. So, your background in sales and leadership really gives you that edge and that experience that people are craving and asking for when they also enter the world of dating, right? And it so happened that by working with some of the executive leaders and business owners, you were actually able to help them and gain their trust to the point that they started asking you about their personal lives, right? That's exactly how you
You
how yeah.
absolutely got it. That
I
is
love
exactly it.
that. I love that. And you have some interesting stories and interesting developments for some of them. Really exciting, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about self-sabotage pattern that shows up most often when women and men start dating. What is showing up? What is happening?
Yeah, I'll talk about the most common pitfalls that I actually see with women.
Mm-hmm.
And some of the self-sabotage that comes in, the number one I would say is limiting beliefs. And often with women, it's not limiting beliefs about ourselves, it's limiting beliefs about our potential future partners. So if
Mm-hmm.
you are a woman in dating, you have probably heard or said some of these terms. There's pee in the dating pool. There are no good men left. There are no good women
Mm-hmm.
left. All men are trash. And so often we will get into these phases where we just start saying it. And of course, we say it because either it's commonly said and acknowledged within different groups that we spend time in, or it's been part of our experience. And so that's one of the top things that I will challenge, because if, let's say, the limiting belief is all men are trash, I have that limiting belief for one of two reasons. Either A, literally all of my experiences with male partners have been not great, and I think that that is normal. And I'm here to tell you that that is not. There are a lot of people out there that have wonderful experiences with wonderful men. Or the other opposite is true. I have a belief system that that is true. So if there's anything that ends up going against that belief system, I'm going to negate it, or I'm more likely to be hyper fixated and focused on what somebody does wrong. So, let's say if I'm in a conversation, instead of being graceful and saying, "Ooh, he said this in this way that didn't make sense," and maybe even provide feedback, I'm more likely to say, "He's trash, I'm moving on." So, that I would say is the number one self sabotage pattern that I see
Mm-hmm.
in us women
Oh,
specifically.
yes. And I hear and see it around a lot as well. So, yeah, I absolutely agree with you. Can you share moments when a client's blind spot was um, causing her connections and how you helped her fix that, see that?
Yeah. Oh, this is such a good question. So, this is different for each person. One of the clients that I remember, it's actually such a good segue from the last question. She had a lot of really, unfortunately, actually abusive relationships. She
Mm,
had grown up in a household that was abusive. Her first husband that she was with and was with for a very long time was verbally abusive. She got out of that relationship, was single for about a 2 year period, got into another relationship. So, what we went through in chatting was talking about the experiences that she's had in her relationships and walking through those experiences, similar as you would walk through, let's say, a candidate about their experiences about a job, and seeing what were some of the blind spots that she had initially in the relationship, because
mhm,
hindsight's 2020, and often we have an opportunity to look back, and when we look back we go, ugh, there were all of these red flags I didn't see about him. So with her, we did that, and she could pinpoint all of the red flags about him, but the blind spot that she had was the inability for her to see that early on and what it was that she did. So her
mhm,
pattern, when we discovered, was like we have this mentality that comes up. I don't know if you've experienced this. I've certainly experienced this, where we think if I've had an experience over and over again, I am more likely to not have that thing happen to me, which actually isn't true. If an experience has been normalized for you, what happens is you're less likely to have that thing stand out, because the way our brain functions is our brain is designed
mm,
to keep us safe. And safety means anything that is abnormal or I'm not used to, flag. But anything that's been normalized to me, your brain doesn't flag. So that's why we will often repeat similar patterns. And for her, what she missed was the way that she would show up in relationships, which in the beginning, she would show up and she would look at the first stage of the relationship and compare it to the last stage of her relationship. So she would say, my ex husband was really verbally abusive. This new guy that I dated was so nice to me. He must be different.
mhm,
Instead of focusing on what were some of the things that you missed with your ex husband in the beginning stages of the relationship, because he was also very nice to you in the beginning stages. So, what were some of
mhm,
those things? And for her, we realized it was people that would overstep her boundaries from the get go. So, making very small but
mm,
subtly controlling comments in the beginning, like, oh, I want you to put your hair up like this, or hey, oh, you said no to not wanting a drink, just have another one, it's not a big deal. And it was those subtleties that we helped her discover, which made her have a different lens for how she looked at the beginning stages of getting into the dating game, so that she had a different rubric and she wasn't comparing the next date to the last guy. What she was
mhm.
doing is she was comparing the next person
Right.
against her set of ideals of what she wanted. So that I would say was one of the top ones that stands out for me.
Then that's a definite aha moment for me as well, because as I learn more about the power of the brain and how it works and what it is designed to do, and I understand that, like you said, it always tries to keep us safe, but how that actually shows up in your dating patterns That's new to me. So that was really insightful.
Thank
Thank
you.
you for
Of
pointing that out to me.
course.
Independence and quick decisions usually win in a boardroom, right? But how do those same traits play out on a date? Is it usually for better or for worse?
Ooh, what an awesome question. So I'll separate those. What's beautiful about quick decision making and what works really well, if you know what you're making a decision against and you have clarity in that area, it helps you, right? So if you know, let's say you're in a position in your life where you don't want to have children and you're with a partner and you're on the first or second date and they do want to have children, that's a really easy place to make a decision very quickly. So that comes in play. And of course, the
Mm-hmm.
reverse is true. Um, but let's say you're in an area where you don't have exact clarity against what you want, and you are in a space where, again, you're coming from not this place of like being open, you're coming from this place of limiting beliefs about how certain people are a certain way, and you're looking at it from that lens. I've seen sometimes really quick decision making, getting people in a space, especially in the world that we live in with online dating, where you can like go through apps and just look at so many different choices of making the decision to not give that person a shot very quickly. And when I see that happen, I see that happen on where someone is making a decision. So, for example, when you go on a first date, the only decision that you have to make is whether or not you want to go on a second date. It's not making a decision of whether you want to get married or this is somebody that you want to date. It's just, did that person earn the right to take you on a second date? That's it.
Mm-hmm.
So it's figuring out where they're making those decisions. But if you have a sense of clarity on what you're looking for, that quick decision making process can save you so much time. Independence, on the other hand, is very interesting. And this is something that's really interesting. It's beautiful to be in a place where you're independent. I am an independent woman. I'm extremely proud of my independence. And for myself in general, I have noticed it previously that being hyper independent has put me in a place where I say, I don't want help. I don't need anything. I don't want to do anything because I can do it on my own. And while all of that is true, what that does is it takes away the opportunity for other people to be able to contribute to you. And this is in relationships in general. So in dating, something that feels good is the ability for somebody to give and feel received. And you've probably felt this on whichever side of the dating spectrum you're sitting, right? When you're trying to give a
Correct.
gift to someone or give a compliment or something to someone and it's not received, that doesn't feel good for the sender. So that's something that I've seen sometimes that pops up, is that level of hyper independence puts us in a position where we say, I'm not actually receptive to anything. And
Mm-hmm.
unbeknownst to us, without us trying to do this, sometimes that can give off the perception that I'm not open to love. I'm not open to a serious
Mm-hmm.
relationship. I'm not open to commitment. So it sends out signals that are not that level of like clarity of this is who I am and this is what I'm looking for and this is the right type of person for me. And that will leave the other person often feeling confused. And what confused people do is nothing. Or what confused people do is waste your time because they don't know,
Mm-hmm.
where you stand.
Mm-hmm.
So those are some of the ways that I've seen it help and not help. The ways that independence has worked out really well is somebody being in a place and a position where they are putting themselves out there and taking ownership and charge of their personal growth, of their dating strategy, and that they're going out there with an open mind, but they're having
Mm-hmm.
no attachment. So if the date doesn't go well, they're not making that mean something about themselves. That
Right.
area I've seen independence come in very
Mm-hmm.
useful.
That is super duper helpful as well, because I can totally see, and I am also part of that world where I am sometimes trying to be a superwoman, and I'm like, no, I don't need help. I can handle everything myself. But now I can see how it can translate completely different when you are trying to date someone or just start dating, and it may very well just scare people away as well. So something
Uh,
to definitely keep in mind. I love that.
Absolutely.
Thank you for
Yes.
bringing that up. Yeah.
Of course. Great question.
Yeah. And then, okay, next one. Dating is communication at full volume, right? We know that. So, where do women most often miscommunicate or go silent, for example?
Oh man, where do I start on this one? Some of our biggest pitfalls that I've seen is depending on what stage that we're at in the dating game and where we're at in terms of our experiences that we've had. Some of the things I've seen is if we're inexperienced in dating, often I see the cool girl coming in, and the cool girl is, oh, I'm totally fine with everything. It doesn't matter. I'm cool. I'm easygoing. And it's trying to give off the vibe of being easygoing without actually stating what it is that we want.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I see the exact opposite of coming off extremely rigid. But I would say the most common pitfall is either not being clear about what it is that we want and what it is that we offer. So
Mm-hmm.
this is a big one that we miss is dating is very similar to interviewing, and this might just be my sales brain coming in
No, I
where
totally
yeah,
agree.
just
It's not.
where when you're in an interview, what do? There's a part of yourself that you're
Mm-hmm.
trying to display your value to the other person in a short amount of time, right? Instead of an
Mm-hmm.
interview, this is a date or a first date or maybe a phone call or text messages.
Right.
And then there's the other part where you are trying to evaluate the other person at the same time. So there's this kind of push and pull that's happening. And what is required for success in that manner is number one, knowing what it is that you want and having that level of clarity. Number
Mm-hmm.
two, knowing what it is that you offer and having that level of clarity. And number three, being able to communicate that in a concise way and not going all over the place. So those are
Mm-hmm.
some of the areas I see kind of some pitfalls and people are not doing that. And on the other hand, when we can make these tiny tweaks where you are having that level of communication, and by the way, if you're online dating, that starts way before you've met someone. That starts with your profile, which
Thank
to
you
me,
for
right? That's
reminding me that.
marketing.
I
With your
know.
profile, do you have the right pictures? Because what are people doing in seconds? Are you communicating what it is that you want, what it is that you offer, what it is that you don't want? So you're repelling a lot of the people that
Right.
you don't want. And then does your messaging when they connect with you match that? So those are some of the pitfalls that I see
Right.
with the way that we
Oh
communicate or
boy,
don't
don't start
communicate.
me on that because those profiles can be pretty scary or pretty ridiculous, but very rarely they are actually to the point, right?
Oh, I'll give you a funny example. So one of my male clients, when we started working together, he got to a space where he said, "I actually am in a space where I want to settle down. I want to meet the woman. I actually want to get married. I want to start having kids." And we went through his dating history, and one of the
Mm-hmm.
things that we found out that was a pitfall for him was the way that he would communicate, he wouldn't make the right invitation. So I got a chance to teach
Mm.
him that your job is to literally make the invitation. And that invitation can be whatever it is, as long as you're very clear about
Mm-hmm.
what it is that you want. And he would make
Right.
kind of these mismatch invitations going out with women that he knew were not his ideal long-term match, but he
Aha.
wanted to spend some time with women. How many of us have had this experience? So it was fun to see it from the
For
other
sure.
side of what happens. And he would come back and forth and he would realize that after 6, 7 months, he'd be like, this isn't the person I want to be with, but that he hadn't been clear in communication and he didn't want to hurt their feelings and
Mm-hmm.
essentially would create this really weird mess, both for
Right.
himself and his partners. And so what we did is we cleared up the way that he made an invitation
Aha.
and said, if you go out with someone and you don't see long-term dating, but you want to spend time with them, what's the way you can communicate where she has the ability to say yes or no to that invite? Sometimes
Right.
women are open to something casual if that's something you
Mm-hmm.
want, and you communicate it in this way it makes sense. And so in that process, what we discovered is he wouldn't stick to his rubric of what he wanted for his ideal match. So if he wanted to have children, and let's say they didn't want to have kids, but she met all of the other things and she was a wonderful person, he would still be like, but I really had so much fun and I want to hang out with her and get to know her better.
Mm-hmm.
So because of that, we put a process in place of actually going through and filtering out some of the initial conversations. So I said, let me see what your dating profile looks like. We kind of redid his prompts to
Mm-hmm.
attract the right people for him, repel the
Mm-hmm.
people that didn't match that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I said, if you are connecting with people that don't meet that, let me go through and be the first line of defense for you. So as you're going through and making, connecting with those matches, let's make sure that they're ideal in your mate profile. So in sales and in business, we have something called ideal client profile.
Yes.
In dating, we have something called ideal mate profile. What is your IMP? And if they didn't match his IMP, then it wasn't something that it made sense to waste the other person's time or his
Right.
time. And ladies, as a result of this, I got a chance to get into the male perspective of dating profiles.
Which is
And
priceless, of
it was
course. Who doesn't
priceless.
want to know about that?
Oh my goodness. And I saw the male experience in so much of what we do that is wild in that experience going
Mm-hmm.
that. And part of what I saw was so many beautiful, intelligent women that the way that they had displayed themselves on their dating profile didn't match the messaging once there was a connection. Whether
Mm-hmm.
it was mismatched photos, whether it was the way that they talked about their prompts really focused kind of on them and not the type of person that they want to attract. And that
Mm-hmm.
was absolutely invaluable. So I took so much of that information. And of course, I brought it back to my ladies and I was like, hey, it's not great for them either. We think that portion is not great for us. It's not the ideal
Right.
experience for them either. And here are a few ways we can shift. And
Mm-hmm.
and that going back and forth of like the different experiences on either side, that
Mm-hmm.
that information has been invaluable.
Absolutely. I can totally see that. So you bring now all the expertise and all the inside of you, right? Into that into that digesting their profiles, into communicating, into setting that up, into helping them to attract the right person. Sorry.
Absolutely.
Yeah, of course.
Absolutely. Yep.
Because we were speaking about the sales and marketing and clients. So yeah, okay. Next question is okay, what changes when a woman can actually state her value and her values without even flinching?
Oh, it is magical. What changes is the ability to be able to really attract the person that you're looking for and really the ideal relationship that you're looking for. Because if
Mm-hmm.
we have the ability to go out there and communicate, this is who I am, these are my values, this is what I bring to the table, and this is what I'm looking for. Imagine that on even the other side, right? Somebody comes to you and says, this is who I am. This is what I bring to the table. This is what I'm looking for. These are my values. Then, very early on, a lot of what causes heartaches in relationships later on, it just gets resolved in the beginning. And if you can resolve some of those in the beginning outside of wasted time and energy, you get yourself into a point where you end up having more and more success and you get more of what it is that you want in life because you know how to go
Mm-hmm.
out there and communicate. You also know how to go out there and put yourself out there, not just in the online dating world, but the offline dating world, the real world, being able to. One of my favorite podcasts, there's these two women that run it that are absolute powerhouses, The Way of the Muse. One of the things that they talk about is if you know how to communicate what it is that you want, you can then start saying that to everyone, right? I'm looking for a person that does da 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 da. So
Mm-hmm.
if you come across that person, they can make that introduction, but that requires really clear, concise communication skills. And when you can be able to have the ability to do that, woo, there is so much that shifts, and that's not just in dating, that's in so many areas of life.
And I actually, wow, I love that. So you are saying that once you're clear on your message and your vision of who you're looking for, you can also ask for help from people you know to help you find that person. That's brilliant.
Absolutely. Yes. And you can set them up for success in the way that they introduce you to other
Mm-hmm.
people. How are the ways that you want to be introduced to your potential
Right.
future ideal mate, right? What does that
Right.
that messaging look like? And man, if you're just giving that labor to somebody to think about who you are, think about what you want, think about making that connection. Let's be real. People are busy. We are all in our own worlds and they're not
Mm-hmm.
pausing to wait. But if you've given somebody the arsenal and tools of what it is that you're looking for, what you bring to the table, when the opportunity arises, they go, hey, I've got somebody for you. Hey, I'd
Right.
love to make an intro. Hey, this is what she brings to the table as well. And
Mm-hmm.
it just makes it so much easier to be able to have those organic connections on top of being able to meet those matches that you want online.
Right. And I can totally envision that. That's powerful.
Yes.
That's a superpower. Wow. Okay. Profiles matter, and we just talked about it, but let's dive a little bit more into that. So, how do you turn a fine bio into something that is absolutely unmistakably authentic?
Ooh, so here's what our bios are designed to do. I want you to think of your bio as your marketing piece and actually your entire profile as your marketing piece. Do
Mm-hmm.
the images, like I'm talking to a professional photographer, you know better than anyone else that the way something, that a picture is worth 1,000 words, and what does that actually display? And does that match your bio? And a lot of times we think of our bio as I'm this person. Here's what I want. Here's what I'm looking for. If you don't meet up to these standards, don't talk to me. So, how many of us have a bio that we've come across that kind of sounds like that? And think about being on the receiving end of that. When I was
Mm-hmm.
scrolling through that gentleman's um, dating apps and going through it, there was so much of that I saw on our end that we do, where we're like, I'm looking for this, and don't even talk to me if you don't have these standards.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And there's nothing wrong, because what is our intention is to bring a level of clarity. But
Right.
what we often miss is that the bio is speaking to the other person. So if you can
Mm-hmm.
shift your bio to say, I am looking for the kind of man that is ready for X, Y, and Z to come into his life, and you're starting out and you're speaking to him or her about what it is that you're looking to actually bring into their life, it will completely shift, because it's the person that's reading on the other end of it goes, wow, I would love a woman that's going to bring, peace, a nurturing environment, fun,
Mm-hmm.
laughter, communication, whatever the thing is that is your
Mm-hmm.
superpower.
Mm-hmm.
And then going into what it is, who you are. So, what do you bring? Who are you? And what are you looking for? And being able to just do that in a few sentences, that's what takes an okay bio to a killer bio. And that's one of the ways that you end up attracting who you want and repelling who you don't want, which is so big for us as women, because often what happens, we get inundated with so many matches, but so many of the wrong matches. And then what does that do? That gives us the experience that, going back to the first thing that we were talking about, there's pee in the dating pool.
Yes.
And we don't stop to consider, is my messaging attracting the unqualified candidates that are
Right.
coming through my pipeline, if we go back through the sales terminology?
I admit that probably very rarely cross our mind. We're
Yes.
always on the receiving end and like, oh, they're so bad.
Yeah,
No
that's
one
just my
out there is,
experience.
yeah, is deserving me. Well, I am of course um, going too sassy on that, but
Yeah.
yeah, that's so true. That's very true, right? Yeah,
Absolutely. And by
and
the way,
that,
ladies,
yeah,
that's true. Have standards, right? Like, you are
mhm,
genuinely the prize. So
right,
what I love, and especially what I've seen over the last 5 to 10 years, is so many women adopting their value, right? Adopting their value that you are amazing and you do
hmm,
deserve somebody amazing and you do bring
yeah,
incredible things into a relationship.
yes,
How do you communicate that in a way where the
hmm,
receiving person goes, oh, this is somebody who's incredible, and wow, they have so much that they bring to a relationship, and I can't wait to do this? Versus often I see it communicated in a way that comes across very condescending. And that's not what we're trying to do. And again, if we're not getting the results that we want, we often don't pause and look at the data and say, is there something about my messaging? Is there something I should shift? Is this something about my strategy? We don't think about that. We go, the opposite sex is awful.
Yes.
And by the way, that's not unique to women. Men do that as well. It's hilarious. They have some preconceived notions about us too that are not true. Yeah.
Yeah. So now let's talk about the other end of things. So how does repelling the wrong matches look like in real practice?
Yeah, the way it looks like is being so clear and concise about who you are, what you bring, and what you look for, that when somebody is the wrong match and they read that, they go, that's not me. But they don't do it in a way where they're like, that's not me, and oh, I'm offended, or I want to get an emotional response where I want to actually interact with this person. So a common example I can bring is, let's say if you're somebody in a stage where you are not open to dating someone who might have younger kids. So there's multiple ways of communicating that, right? One way to communicate it is no one with kids, please. So if you do that, you think that you're coming across very clear, except it might be taken in such a bad way from somebody who does have kids, where they get emotionally instigated enough, and anything that arises emotion from us, and this is just marketing 101, will make people take action. This is something that you'll see in social media posts that get a lot of engagement. This is something that you'll see in the news often, whether it's positive invoking emotion or negative invoking emotion. So what you want to do is you want to invoke emotion in areas where you want to attract people to you, and you want to not have any emotion attached to areas where you want to repel people to you. So in that exact example, you can say, I have so much respect for people with young children. At this stage of my life, I'm not open to dating anybody with young kids, or I'm not open to having any children, or not looking to experience being a parent. So something along the lines where the person reads in, they go, that was clear and that makes sense, but they're not actually feeling some sort of emotional way where it's going to make them want to get into your inbox to tell you how wrong you are, which I don't know if that has been experiences that you all have had, but those have definitely been experiences that some of the people I work with end up saying. And they're like, I'm so clear though. I said no to this and what's happening. So just being cognizant of where you're invoking emotion and being intentional about that.
Yeah. Powerful words, right? What we say in the way we say, that's everything.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Now, how can a woman stay soft and open while also without compromising her standards? How we can work on that?
I would say those two things are it's not an either or conversation. Being able to be soft, open, and nurturing does not mean being somebody that doesn't have standards. I actually see this a lot with women. I see this a lot with my female executives in the workplace, where it's either one or the other spectrum. Like if you are very, very kind and compassionate, you're almost a people pleaser and you have no standards and you're a doormat, or we'll try to kind of self-correct and go to the other end of the spectrum. And it's like, you're really harsh and you're coming across and people are like, why is she such a bee? And then we get mad and we're like, we wouldn't say that if it was a guy. And we go into that spectrum. And what I've noticed is it's kind of a fine balance, and it doesn't have to be either or. You can be really kind, open, friendly, compassionate, soft, funny, charming in the way that you're coming off, and those are all of the ways that will make you charismatic. Yet at the same time, when somebody doesn't meet up to your standards, when somebody doesn't have the values you're looking for, or somebody crosses boundaries, learning how to be able to set a boundary for yourself. And really, it comes down to that self-confidence of, are you somebody that doesn't have to put yourself in a place where you think you have to control everything and everyone else, and saying, I'm going to come off really harsh, because if I'm really harsh, then no one's going to respond in this way with me. And can you learn the skill sets that you can be soft, receptive, open, fun, inviting, and yet if there's something coming in that you is uninvited, you have the ability to be able to set those boundaries. And that, I would say, is a skill, and it's a skill that I'm seeing more and more women learn. But it's really the skill setting of having specific boundaries, and knowing that if you have standards, you can still be soft, nurturing, and any other characteristic that you like, and that doesn't mean that it devalues your standards in a certain way.
Right. But it also has a lot to do with learning to communicate your standards, right? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And often those standards are communicated in even nonverbal communication. So you don't have to just come out and say, I have those standards. You can say
Right.
something along the lines of still being kind of like open, funny, receptive. And instead of, let's say if he says something that he puts his foot in his mouth, this is an area that sometimes men end up being a little bit good with in the way that we perceive them. They would perceive themselves differently. And instead of getting him into a point where it's so critical and now he feels like he's in trouble and it's the first or second date, being
Mm-hmm.
able to set your standards and your boundaries in a way that is still soft and doesn't make him feel bad,
Right.
but doesn't put you in a position that you've compromised anything. And
Mm-hmm.
often that is so much more powerful, because think of it the opposite way too. Sometimes we put ourselves in a position, and ladies, I will tell you, sometimes we put our foot in our mouth too. It happens to us also. And imagine the person that comes harsh at you, that's really critical, versus the person that can actually reinstate their boundaries and correct that behavior or
Mm-hmm.
the way they like to be communicated to, but in a way that actually sets that boundary and doesn't necessarily make you feel bad. So paying
Right.
attention to some of those things and seeing how somebody takes feedback. If they took that feedback in a good way and it was a one-off thing, then you can decide how you want to continue engaging with
Mm-hmm.
them. If it was something where they overstep boundaries in such a grotesque way where you're like, wow, that was way over the line, and early on that's just unacceptable, then you can always choose to disengage. And disengaging from situations that don't meet your standards is a way of stating your standards, not just to the other person, but to yourself, and building
Right.
that confidence that you will
Mm-hmm.
only allow what it is that matches what you're looking for into your world.
Right. So that would be a good time to decide whether you
Absolutely.
allow that or you are setting your standards and
Absolutely.
communicate them. Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Now, walk us through the dating strategy workbook that you've created. What's inside and why does it work?
Yeah, the dating strategy workbook came from a process of realizing when I was working with my executives, and I would start asking them questions like, what are you looking for? What are some of your goals? What is the way that you're like, what is your dating strategy? That there was no answers. That often a lot of
Mm,
us are going out there and we don't have a dating strategy. We think having an online profile means having a dating strategy. So I put together a strategy of
funny.
just a few steps that can kind of clarify some of the items we've been talking about. And the number one thing is defining your end goal. What is it that you actually want? And not having that level of clarity can cause so many issues, because then you're letting, kind of different things in, or you're miscommunicating the way that you're going out there. So what is it that you want? And be as specific as possible. So something along the lines of like, I want a long-term partner for marriage and kids in 3 years. That's the level of specificity that I'm talking about. And then the second part is creating your IMP, your ideal mate profile. So describing the characteristics of that person, describing the life stage of that person who aligns
Hmm.
with your goals. What are the experiences that they have actually had? So do you want to date somebody who has never been in a long-term relationship? Do you want to date someone who has had some of those experience? What are some of kind of the going back to work terms, hard and soft skills that they have, right? What are the
Hmm.
experiences that they've had in life? And what are the experiences that they've had, and what do their characteristics look like? Some of those soft experiences. I'm looking for someone who's compassionate. I'm looking for someone who's decisive, who's nurturing, who's grounded. So, like, what does that actually look like? And being in a space where, let's say, if your end goal is to have somebody that you're in a long-term partnership with that wants marriage and kids, your ideal mate profile would probably be also someone who wants to get married and have kids within a similar time window. And so being very cognizant of that. And then the next part is discovering where that person and that profile spends their time online and offline. Often we're taught one part of the strategy, which is just do the things that you like, and you'll find people that are in line with that, which is accurate. But
Mm-hmm.
your ideal partner isn't going to have the same exact interests as you. So depending on who that person is, let's say if I am someone who is looking for someone who is very decisive, and I'm looking for someone who is very fitness driven, and I'm looking for a decisive man who's very fitness driven, yoga might be my favorite fitness thing to do, but it might not be his. So maybe I'm spending a little bit more time at a gym. Maybe it's a specific type of gym. Let's say I'm looking for an affluent male who's very decisive and into fitness. Maybe that means I'm going to go spend some time at Lifetime. So like that's where he's spending some of his time. And then where does that person spend their time online and offline? So ensuring that that is something that you're paying attention to, and then being present in those spaces. And when I say present, I mean truly being present. So when you're going into an environment, kind of not being distracted on your phone and having your energy where you're connecting with the environment, you're looking at different people, you're making eye contact, you're smiling. If you are somebody that's looking for a man right now, some of the messaging that they have been given is make sure that you're asking for permission, and don't be that weird person, and don't be that creep, and shoot your
Mm-hmm.
shot. So what that does is sometimes that can be like, I want to shoot my shot, but she didn't look at me, and so I don't want to be that creepy person at the gym that's talking to her, or at
Mm-hmm.
the bar that's talking to her. But if you're going in and you're making eye contact and you show them that you're open and receptive, it makes it a little bit easier to start some of that conversation. So presence is a really big one in those
Mm-hmm.
environments.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then crafting your messaging. This is what we've been talking about, right? So if it's your online profile, your messaging is more than just your actual words. It's also your pictures. And do your pictures communicate what you would want to communicate to attract the type of partner that you want? That is
Mm-hmm.
a really big thing. I'll actually give you a fun example. And as a photographer, this will probably resonate with you. Um, Somebody that her and I didn't actually end up working with each other, but I had an opportunity to review her dating profile, and she was very artistic. So what she had
Mm-hmm.
was a lot of very artsy pictures, and some of the artsy pictures were very it communicated a lot of doom and gloom instead of communicating a lot of
I
what she
see.
wanted, which was
Mm-hmm.
artistic, right? There was a lot of like black and white pictures. There was a lot of, she had this picture that keeps popping into my mind. It looked like fog or ink that was coming through.
Mm-hmm.
Beautiful work of art. If she was trying to get into an art gallery, phenomenal set of portfolio.
I
For
see.
getting the type of
Right.
partner that she wanted, those are not the pictures that I would have
Right.
chosen. So, like,
Mm-hmm.
having the right pictures, having the right messaging, like we've been talking about. So, something like, I'm excited to connect with a partner who's looking to start a family in the next few years, right? So, like, that is a way where you're telling them what you want, but you're saying it in their verbiage, right? So, when somebody reads that, in that first line, they go, I'm excited to connect with someone and start a family. Or like, that's not me. I'm looking for something casual. Going back to that
Mm-hmm.
attraction and repelling.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then having a dating process. What does that actually look like for you? So like, if they don't meet these values, they're disqualified. That is an area where I see a lot of us make mistakes, where we go, well, he was really good in all these other things. I just, well, maybe I can shift that. Maybe I can be able to see that. And having
Mm-hmm.
something that you're very clear against. So, a lot of like, what are some of your must haves? What are your nice to haves? And what are your
Mm-hmm.
deal breakers? So, your
Mm-hmm.
deal breakers could be, if your must haves are like a certain stage in life, want something along those lines. And maybe he has all your must haves and all your like to haves, but he is abusive. That is an immediate disqualifier, right? And so, like, making sure that you're getting into that portion from the get-go. So you've got something that you're actually measuring them against. And when we don't have this in place, what we do is we measure people against previous experiences.
I see.
And here is what is very dangerous about that. If you have gone out there and let's say you've had certain like good or bad experiences and you're comparing that person just against those experiences, this could be the best person you've ever dated, but they could still not meet those standards. So that is an area where I see sometimes people actually struggle, is like they still don't meet the standard. And often if it's something is unique to us, we value it more. So if it's the first time that you've had somebody pull out your chair or treat you in a certain way, it's really easy to be like, wow, that was so amazing, instead of being like, those are some of the standards and expectations I've had. So having what you're tracking somebody against and that dating process is really important. And then actually tracking your dates, like keeping a specific kind of pipeline. Yes, track your dates. Keep a thing for yourself and say, like, first date, here's things I liked. Second date, here's things I liked.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yes.
I would never think about that. Yeah.
This will tell you more about you than them. So often people think when I say track your dates, you're going on like 20, 30 dates at a time. That's not what I'm talking about, which if you're doing that, that is definitely a strategy that works too. But let's say you're dating one person and then that didn't work. And then you dated another person after 3 months, that didn't work. What we often miss is the cycles that we go through and what are our processes. And if you're keeping good notes of, these are things I like, this is how I felt, these are the thoughts that came up, this is what I didn't like, here's how I observed. What it does is it puts you in the observer seat in these interactions. And so you're not stuck just in your head and trying to like be like, I want him to like me or I don't like him. And over a period of time, what you start to realize is you have similar experiences, similar thoughts, and similar sensations in similar parts of the dating process. And knowing those patterns about yourself is extremely powerful. And there's just a couple of steps left, but that was a lot that I just threw at you. Any questions so far before
No, it's been so helpful, even though I am not a part of a dating world right now, but I still find it so helpful.
Beautiful.
Just in other areas of my life as well. So, yeah.
And that's a lot of these, like I said, I am not a dating coach or a relationship coach. It's just, these are strategies that help in really being able to achieve any goals, and dating can be a strategy and a goal. And so that brings us to step number 8, which is either promote, demote, or keep steady. So this is the area we touched on it a little bit earlier in the conversation, where sometimes what we go through, if on a first date, you're sitting there going, should I marry him? Should I not marry him? Impossible question to answer. Absolutely impossible question to answer. You do not know this person.
Right.
That is not enough data points and enough time after a 30, 60, 90 minute, time that you're spending together. So you get a chance. And sometimes we're like, I'm afraid of jumping in. Is this too soon? Is this guy doing this? And so if you think of dating in stages, if they did great on the first, let's say, phone conversation or in texting, you promote them to a phone conversation. If they did great on that, you promote them to a first date. If they did great on that, you promote them to a second date. And you continue. And let's say on the 5th date, they didn't do a great job, you can demote them, right? And you can go through this process where you promote them to someone you're dating. You promote them to someone you're exclusively dating. Maybe promote them to boyfriend, girlfriend, promote them to fiance. They didn't meet the marks, they got demoted. So like there's different ways that you're thinking of that. But again, that goes in stages as well. And this process I found, especially for us women, will give us a lot of self-confidence of not, in cases that we have had bad experiences too, where we can trust ourselves that anywhere in the process, they get promoted or demoted, and knowing what level they're at, what kind of access they get to you. If you and I go on a first date,
beautiful,
the only access you get to me is my undivided attention for the 30, 60, 90 minutes we're at. I don't owe you anything else. You do not get access to me texting you back and forth, providing emotional support, being, shoulder to cry on. No. Those are for later on. Those are boyfriend things that he gets access to, right? Those
Mm-hmm.
are not first date accesses. If you go to the second stage and you get a second date, what you get access to is my undivided attention during that time and communicating back and forth with you about the date, not just going back and
Mm-hmm.
forth the entire time.
Mm-hmm.
If you and I exclusively date, you get access to X, right? If you become my boyfriend, you might get access to me now physically. Now there might be some emotional benefits for you where I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to hold emotional space for you. So like dividing those up front will put you in a place where you might find yourself giving way too much in the beginning of a relationship. You might find yourself being in a space where you had an amazing date and you were so excited about him. Now you're just texting
Mm-hmm.
back and forth and you're
Yes.
holding all this emotional space.
Yes.
And it's been 90 days and you're in the friend zone and he comes to you and he's like, I'm not looking for anything serious.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that you gave in too much, is the fact that somebody who had not gotten promoted to a certain level got access to you at an inappropriate
I
level.
see.
Allow people to get promoted or demoted. So this is step
Mm-hmm.
number 8, and knowing what those levels of access look like. And step number 9, and this is especially for my ladies, is invest in yourself. Often we are pretty good at investing in ourselves in things like therapy or sometimes professional development. When it comes to dating, I find that women are so much less likely to invest in themselves than men. And this makes sense culturally. The majority of us have grown up to be the he buys me a drink or I get into this space. And it's not an area where we're like, what do you mean? It should be really easy for me. Why should I invest in myself? But invest in yourself. Invest in yourself with professional pictures. Invest in yourself in going through and gathering data to figure out if something is not getting you the results that you want, why
Mm-hmm.
it's not getting you the results
Yes.
that you want. Invest in yourself in therapy. Invest in yourself in listening to books or podcasts. Invest in yourself in potentially getting, one-on-one coaching from a dating coach or from an executive coach. But invest in yourself in areas where you're not getting the results that you want. It is the fastest, most shortcut way of getting what you want, especially if you're having recycled thoughts about something. So if you're catching the way you're thinking about thinking about dating is the same thoughts over and over again, it's time for new information to come in. So that
Mm-hmm.
is the dating strategy workbook of really being able to go through. And I actually gave you guys all of it and went through every
No,
single
that's
step.
amazing.
Yes. But that's the process that I will normally go through with clients who
Uh-huh.
end up expressing any interest in needing some support in this area.
Mm-hmm. That was so well said and so much helpful information. And even as you kept describing it, I could see the patterns that literally happen all the time with people I know, with my own daughters. So, yeah, there's a lot to think about and change and work on for sure.
Absolutely. I can tell you, ladies, for me personally, when I was in my dating journey, I was getting the same results, where the results I would get is the men that I was interested in somehow would lose interest throughout the process. And the men I wasn't interested in would be really interested. And I know that that is a very common experience that we have. And so finally, I was with a partner, and him and I were together for a year and a half, and I was just head over heels for this man. And I was in something that now there's a beautiful terminology called situationship for it. I didn't even have that terminology then. And we essentially got in a relationship where we were kind of together, kind of not together. He broke up with me multiple times, and I found myself in a scenario where I never thought I would be in. And I had judged women previously that had been in those scenarios. And I got out of that and I thought, what am I doing? What was that? How did I, knowing my value, knowing my worth, knowing what I bring into a relationship, how did I get sucked into that? And that
Mm-hmm.
actually led me to take a relationship course myself.
Uh-huh.
That course is no longer available. Otherwise, I would give them a shout out. But it was through that I realized I had certain patterns that
Patterns.
I
Mm-hmm.
had gotten into. And as a result, very quickly, and I'm talking with a matter of months, I had an opportunity to meet Carl, that is the man I've been with for the last 8 years, who was one of the most wonderful humans I met. And he actually ended up making me his partner extremely quickly and creating that exclusive relationship that I had been looking for. as soon as I implemented the things that I learned and
Right.
invested in myself. And as a result, it just, even in my relationship, I know this was really geared towards people dating, but for anybody that might be listening that might be in relationships, that level of investment continues. So if you are in a
Hmm.
relationship,
Yes.
continue investing in relationship skills, communication skills, conflict resolution skills. And if you're not, invest in the first stages of dating and figure out where you're having results that are unclear that you don't want. Is it you're not going out with the right type of people? Is it when you're going out with people they're not responding to you a certain way? Is it people are not getting back to you after an incredible first date? And if you start gathering data around that, you're gonna find that there are certain patterns. And for whatever the struggle is, there are tools out there. So make sure you are investing in yourself. I cannot stress that enough.
Yes, I absolutely agree. Now, let's talk for a second about something in general. So, what do you feel is the biggest misunderstanding people carry about modern dating, like dating in general, modern dating?
There's pee in the dating pool. There are no good people out there. All the good people are taken. It's too hard. Whatever city I'm in has really bad dating people that are in there.
Mm,
Just a lot of things like that. When again, it goes back to, are you capturing data? And I know sometimes I'll talk to somebody and they'll be like, "Well, you've been in a relationship for 8 years. You don't know how it is now."
right,
But
right.
this is coming from experience of working with people literally right now in real time and getting a chance to see what their experiences are, and people who had these all of these same misconceptions. It's too easy for women, it's too hard for men, it's too easy for men.
Hmm.
Men are like this, women are like
Right.
this, dating is like this, and all of those patterns that come up, when in reality there's been just the people that I've had a chance to work with having those exact things in a few
Hmm.
short amounts of time. By going through an actual strategy, they got very different results. So the biggest misconception is the results that I'm getting is a result of the modern dating world, versus the results that I'm getting might be, just might be, a strategy or a shift that I'm not making on my end.
Hmm. I see. Now, for the woman who feels like she's tried absolutely everything under the sun and nothing is working, where will you have her begin?
I would have her go through some of the items that we chatted about, and I would have her start by saying, I haven't tried everything, because if I had, I would have the results I want. So that belief of, as soon as you tell your brain you've tried everything, your brain says, well, I've tried everything, so there's nothing else to do, right?
Hmm.
That will immediately stop your investing in yourself, your gathering data. And I would say to that woman, are you doing all the things we talked about? Do you have a dating strategy? Are you communicating clearly? What does your dating profile look like? What does your dating profile communicate to the other person? Is that what you wanted to communicate? Are you capturing data in what you're going through? Are you evaluating that
Right.
data? And so if you haven't done some of the things that we went through even in this conversation, I would say you haven't done everything. And to restart and catch when those thought processes are coming up, and see, what is it that I can shift in the way that I'm showing up? What is it that I can shift in the way that I'm communicating or what I'm letting in, that
Hmm.
I have the ability to control? And there's a lot that we don't have the ability to control. And I want to be
Hmm.
super clear about that. But there are a few things that we can control. And so to just focus on that, and to not let your previous experiences dictate your
Hmm.
future,
Hmm.
because you've had previous experiences for a specific reason, and that reason doesn't mean that should live in your future. So that's what the advice I would give her.
Beautiful. And now let's talk about how someone can reach out to you if they want more information, if they decide that, yes, absolutely, I want to work with her, I need her help right now.
Yeah, you can reach out to me actually via email, Shar at limitlessconsulting.agency. That would be the best way to get a hold of me. Again, I mainly focus on executive development and executive coaching, a lot of business development and coaching. But if you're specifically interested in chatting about dating, you're more than welcome to reach out to me and we can connect, and I can see if it's something that I can assist with.
Beautiful. Okay. Thank you. Sure. You shared so much information today, and it was like a whole wealth of information that was extremely helpful to me as well as everybody who tuned in and listened, I'm sure. And I'm sure some of these women will start reaching out to you and talk about,
Absolutely.
yeah, about all the way you can help them. All
Yeah,
right. Thank
absolutely.
you so very much for joining me tonight and talking to me about all these beautiful and scary things called
Yeah.
dating.
And I just wanted to acknowledge you. You are such a beautiful soul and you do such a good job. You're somebody that I've met that genuinely is one of the best networkers and connecting people with one another. You are somebody that is so good at saying, this is my community and this is the area where I see my community needing resources, and such a selfless human, and being able to really bring something to your women and the communities that you're a part of, and just being able to uplift people. So thank you so much for hosting this for us and having me
Well,
on as
thank
well.
you so much for your nice words. Okay. Good night, Shar. Thank you
Have a
again
good
for
night.
joining me
Bye,
tonight.
ladies.
Bye.